Welcome to the ThisABILITY Adventures podcast. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Chip Dodd from Team ThisABILITY.
So I have with me a couple of teams who took on the Buff Betty adventure race last weekend. The Buff Betty is an all-women's race, and there was a 6-hour and a 10-hour option. It was at Occoneechee State Park in Virginia. And Chip and I were the designers of this course. It was our first race that we've actually designed an in-person race. We've designed a lot of virtual courses where you go to a certain place and do it on your own. But this was our first mass start race. It was really, really fun to put on. And Adventure Addicts is the race company and directors for this race. They always put on a great race. So I felt like there's a little bit of pressure to get it just right. And I hope everyone had a great time. With me now is Chip, who, needs no introduction, I guess, on this podcast. And Kit Vreeland doesn't need much of a introduction. She was the winner of the 10-hour course, and she can tell us more about her history and who she races with. And we also have Caroline and Allie Hill. They were the winners of the 6-hour race. And I guess we'll start with you guys. Can you tell us what your intro to adventure racing has been, and where are you coming from?
So we are a mother-daughter team, and this was our first adventure race ever. And we live in Charlottesville, Virginia, and the race was a little more than 2 hours from home. So it was very accessible for a start. And I believe I ran across the advertisement, and I thought the Buff Betty race website was so welcoming and so supportive, saying, mother-daughter pairs, aunt and niece pairs, and it just seemed so beginner friendly that I thought it was a great opportunity to hang out with this one for the weekend. So.
That is wonderful. I'm glad you found the race. Had you heard of adventure racing before?
No, I feel like we've run into those flags in the woods before, but didn't know what it was all about. And so that component, since we do like to be outdoors and we do sports, that element of the adventure racing was the key, because it was like a big scavenger hunt in the woods, and it took a lot of pressure off. It wasn't just about speeding from one place to the other. It just was about having fun and seeing nature and stopping and looking around. So it was very attractive.
Yeah.
You guys had never done orienteering either coming into this? Oh my God. Like, you guys are navigating like you were pros. I thought for sure you were orienteers that hadn't done an adventure race.
I'd love to learn how to orienteer. No, I do a lot of trail building in my town, and I'm on a board of a trail foundation. And so we do a lot of maps and whatnot, just making maps and adjusting maps, but not orienteering. So
also, well, I was chasing you guys doing media, and I think you said you both are competitive mountain bikers in your for adventure racing. Yeah. So you already had mountain biking down pat. You obviously could trek. So, but you wung it on the nav and still did really well. Like, that's really impressive.
Well, thanks to your course, your maps were great, and your clues were really great. So,
well, we should also give some props to Mark Latanzi, who made those maps, made the base layers, and then Liz and Michelle put the points on there, and we told them where the points should go. So there's a lot of collaboration in those maps and making them just right. And I was impressed by them. Like, wow, if you had known like the maps that we started with of that park, it's a not very well-known park, and lots of trails were not on the base layer map. And anyway, I'm glad you had a good experience with the maps. Kit, why don't you tell us your experience, and how long have you been racing, and how you started racing?
Oh yeah, hi, thanks. I did my first adventure race back in 2007, and it was up here in Vermont, the Green Mountain Adventure Racing Association, which many people now know because they hosted nationals last year. And it was a 12-hour race, and it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. And it was my favorite day of the year for the next 10 years that I did this one race. And I couldn't look forward enough to wanting to do this 12-hour race every year. So in 2016, I actually connected with another racer to start doing 24-hour races, and then expeditions. My first expedition was in 2018, and haven't really looked back. Done a couple expeditions every year, and yeah. And so I currently race with the Women of AR race sponsored team with my wife, Ashley, who shout out, it's our anniversary today. So that's yay. And we've been inviting guest racers for our Women of AR team for a lot of the races we've been doing this year. And Buff Betty, actually, I raced it solo because I was coming back from a week-long training, and it was on my way home. So I didn't know if I was actually going to be able to make it. So I didn't want to commit as a team to anybody in case I had to drop. So yeah.
So I have a couple of memories of you from some of my first races, and you did the C2C one year, and we were on a trek, and it was at night, and it was, to us, we'd had some difficulties with some of the points, and then you came bounding by us and then ducked into the woods like really fast and came back out really fast, and your whole team was like past us in no time. And I was like, wow, I can't believe that's even possible. I think we asked you like, how did you know where to go and what you were doing? And I think at the time you had said that sometimes you just go ahead and kind of go on where you think it should be. And then the guys behind you were being a little more surgical in case you didn't get it. And I don't know if that's how you do things now, but at the time I was just in awe. I was like, wow, that was really amazing.
Seriously, it was like watching a deer run through the woods. It's like, what? How is she doing that? She was in and out. We're trying to get a bearing and a distance, and you're already in and out. Like we're still talking about it. It's like, holy crap.
Yeah, I mean, it was beautiful. It really was. And then more recently, we were racing the World Championships in Africa, and your team was near us on that opening trek, and it was along the beach, and we'd been on the sand for a long, long, long time. And you once again were charging ahead of the team, like you were the one on the maps, and you were, kind of trying to coax everybody to go a little bit faster. And
that was a very long 20-kilometer trek. It was, I was motivated to, yeah.
You had a little bit more sense of urgency than some of the rest of us that were kind of all in that clump together. Yeah. But anyway, great job winning the race. You had time left, and I want to start with you for what your strategy was for this race. And I guess I should also give a little bit of an overview for the 10-hour race. It opened with a bike, and you could get some points before the trek or after. Like all of the bike points you could get either before or after a trek. And then they needed to bike back to the paddle, and it ended with a trek. So what was your overall strategy for the race?
I knew based on the maps and the distances that it was going to be, relative to what I'm used to with my speed, that it was going to be a relatively quick race. And I think I really enjoyed that option for the bike points, being able to get them either before or after that kind of crux trek. And based on the flow, there was a way to kind of clear them without having to add significant time or distance. And for me, that just made it a lot more simpler to think about, okay, I'm on the maps navving for this bike section, and I'm being diligent until I get to the trek. And then after the trek, it was a straight shot, head down into the wind, ears pinned back to the next TA. And not having to think throughout that and be able to just self-care and get my food in at that time. I think that really made sense to me. So it made it more simple. Yeah, that's made sense to me to do that.
Yeah, I think it's always a little bit easier too when you think that it's going to be clearable. Like you don't have to consider which points should you skip or not skip. So, and often the Buff Betty is clearable by at least a few teams. So, okay. So Caroline and Allie, what was your strategy on the 6-hour race?
Well, not having done a race before, we didn't know to come up with much of a strategy, except we did see that the boats provided were canoes, and we happened to own fiberglass kayaks. And so we thought that that would be a speed advantage. And so we did take the time to schlep those onto the van and clean them out from all the dust in the garage. So that was the only kind of big picture strategy thing I think we thought of. Otherwise, we're just going to wing it. So,
and I should have said that the 6-hour course was designed a little bit differently. It started with a quick trek to the boats, and then there was a paddle, and then a trek to bikes, and then a bike to the finish. And yeah, so the Buff Betty this year allowed people to bring their own boats if they had them. And that was also pretty necessary because I think the outfitter,
Yep.
We maxed out the outfitter. So that's great. And yeah, that's, I think would give you a little bit of a time advantage and just having the experience on the water. So that's pretty neat. And again, the 6-hour course is usually a little bit more straightforward for beginners so that the decision-making isn't as challenging. But I'm wondering, is there any specific point or any part of the race that you felt any more challenging than the rest?
I'd say there was one point that we struggled at, but other than that,
which was the graveyard one.
the cemetery.
The cemetery, yes.
We were there for a long time.
Yeah, and we almost gave up on that one. Carol said, let's get going. I was like, let's just keep trying. Let's go try one more time. And in the end, we realized how important points were compared to time. We didn't understand the importance of, clearing a course or getting as many points as you can instead of rushing to just finish the course.
Yeah.
So that was a good learning opportunity for us in the end.
And some points are 2 points. And I think that cemetery point was worth 2, right? Or no?
No, the 6-hour course, all points were 1 point.
Points were 1. Okay.
But maybe you should pull that point up.
Oh, sure. Let me,
it did provide a challenge, I think, for a lot of teams. And we purposely, I added that one just because it seemed like it was a cool thing to find in the woods. And like, even though the shorter races, the navigation was a little more straightforward, we kind of felt like, well, it'd be worth a challenge. And so yeah, finding a graveyard, and I don't know, was it what you expected when you saw the clue and then you got back there? What did you think about that?
I don't know. We kind of wandered all around for a long time, too far to the right mostly. We just couldn't seem to find it. I think some people had come in on the side too far to the down the trail, and we kind of just followed them and looked around there instead of finding where it really was, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's easy as a beginner to kind of trust when you see other people in the same area and then realize that they may not have any idea what they're doing, and we have to base it on our own decisions and not where other people are.
Yep. And we kind of plan. Well, one is when we do races like this, we're always looking for something unique. So when we found that cemetery, it's like we have to incorporate that into the race. It's just creepy going into the woods looking for gravestones. But
so
also,
how did you find that cemetery? Were you just meandering around, or did someone at the park tell you about it?
There's software called CalTopo that we use to produce the races. And so if you look on CalTopo, there is a little purple square.
Oh.
And it's not in the right spot, but it shows that there is a property boundary in the middle of the woods that's very small. And so that triggers us to go look for it, like what's out there that there's a property boundary. So this CalTopo software that you're looking at now, this is the software we use to not only design the course, but also put in the trails that didn't exist on the maps. So for example, all of this red trail, we had to add that using CalTopo in our GPX file. Wow. And then when Mark goes and does his course or his race maps, he makes it look all pretty because he's got all this LiDAR information, this base information. So designing races and mapping is like it takes a lot to get it right for sure.
Wow.
So I want to ask Kip though, because this was one point that was, well, quite a few points were on both the 6-hour race and the 10-hour race. But this point was also on the 10-hour course. And Kit, did you have any problems with this CP, and how did you attack this one?
No, this was a really cool CP. I didn't particularly have problems with this one. In my preparation for maps, when I have time, especially for the bike sections, I use a map wheel. And so that gives me, a sense of distance from a point A to point B. I'm actually looking at my map right now, and I didn't map wheel this, so I'm saying that oftentimes I map wheel so that I can have, a pretty rough, like, okay, from that turn, I now only have 700 meters till my attack. I didn't map wheel this one, so I guess I trusted that I was going to hit that turn. So where it bends southeast, more specifically, and the fact that there's, a little hill to the left. You can see the contour line. That was my attack point, and it worked out for me. So just take a bearing from there.
And also, I guess you probably saw CP21 at that intersection.
That's not on my map, actually.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
That was just the 6-hour course.
Right.
I think, the more experience you get, the more you're able to pull together all of the right information at the right time. Kit got the distance and the turn and the terrain, and then you probably took a rough bearing from that turn.
Yeah, I mean, rough to exact. I mean,
okay, so you were exact on that, yeah.
And then always having backstops, so if I hit the water, then I've gone too far. I've got my pace counting, so we know that I'm, with this one, it's like 50 meters in the woods. On the bike, if I hit that next trail intersection, I've gone too far. So, just always in my mind, just because, experience, I think, has really helped with this. It's all there to make sure I'm noting what my attack is, and it's not foolproof. I'll talk about a couple that I had to reattack multiple times, but
yeah, and you do make it sound easy pulling all that stuff together as if it's like second nature, but it's tricky to think about all those things at the same time. So what were your challenges in the race?
Number 9 was my first. Yeah, 9 and 17 actually were the only two that I had to reattack. And 9, so on the 10-hour map.
I'm on the 10-hour trying to find it.
Yeah, they're down south there.
You move your heads to the top here.
Interesting.
So 9 was got tripped up a little bit because there was a bench on the trail right at that turn. And so I found myself going south and knowing that I was going too far, but not finding that it actually ended up being in like a north-south reentrant inside that east-west reentrant. And so I think I when I look at my tracks back, I just missed it a couple times, and I found myself too deep in the woods. So I attacked from a bench that was on the trail rather than where I should have from the turn on the trail. So I just got tripped up a little bit.
And those maps, make the terrain look like it's a little more, I don't know, obvious than it is, I think. I mean, I'm not sure what the contour lines were, but it's kind of subtle in there. So, yeah. Okay, there's your
track. Yeah, you were right on it. It was just off just by a few meters. Yeah.
Yeah. And since you said a couple of points, was there something else you had a challenge with? Oh, you said 17.
17. So if you go east just a little bit there.
That one was.
That was a really cool point. So that was medium-sized holly in pines, and it was dense pines, just, just constant vertical, kind of hiding the point. It wasn't hidden necessarily, but you couldn't not be on it. To see it. And so, I attacked. You can see maybe 50 meters, not even too far the first time. And then, found my way to the trail, so instead of going left, I wanted to go right and just see if my backstop was the trail. Once I hit the trail, then I could reattack from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good job finding it. We knew it would be a challenge because of that. And yeah, it was really hard to see anything in there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool.
You can tell a lot of it. We wanted this course to have a lot of different course options. And so you can tell on this one, you could have taken the trail around, and then there's a little bit more prominent attack point. Like you don't necessarily need to measure down and go in perfect. you can just kind of find this little reentrant. You can see the water and then pop it from there. But your attack is more efficient. If you just measure down and you take a bearing, you would get to it quicker without going on the trail. It'd be a lot more fast. But it's neat. We put it right in the middle, so it kind of, do I go this way or that way? And you have to make a decision.
Yeah, I think you'll see with my tracks, just to note, because I saw a lot of other people's tracks. Thanks for doing that, Chip, and overlaying, you know, a lot of other people that were able to kind of get a GPX. I tried to stay off of, as much as I love mountain biking, it's my favorite thing to do. I tried to stay off of the mountain bike trails as much as possible because the travel was just much slower. So I did a lot of in and outs, and I saw a lot of people were kind of using the mountain bike trails to attack more than I did. That was just part of my strategy, was keep to the double wide.
I think that's wise because those trails were kind of mushy and yeah, I agree. And while we've got to, then the end of the peninsula there, or the panhandle, was the trek section, and you had the option to swim but didn't take it. I'm curious about that. How did you choose to swim or not to swim?
Yeah, it seems so obvious, doesn't it? That first 11 to 12, the swim would have saved me time. I despise swimming, and even with a PFD, I get a little fearful. I also, you know, heard that the water was maybe bath water and not refreshing. So that kind of lended to it because it was so hot. You know, if it was refreshing and cold, I would have done it. And then my last kind of decision on it, not only do I not like the water, it wasn't actually refreshing, was I didn't want to carry the PFD with me for that whole trek. There were a lot of brambles in this woods. I knew it would get caught on things, and I like to go fast through the bushwhack, and, you know.
Yeah, and your track is basically
Dialed.
like,
yeah.
yeah. And I have to say, it surprises me a little bit because, well, I'm afraid of the water, much less so than I used to be. Like, I've learned how to swim, and, you know, it's much less of a problem for me. But I know you've done some swimming and races, you know, that one race in Africa where we had to cross the river. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm really glad I've got my teammates around me, and I'm not out.
Did you see my little post-race Africa interview, or like in the?
I must not have.
I got caught in a current, and I was going out to the Indian Ocean. I could not make headway as I was kicking, and I actually had to have somebody come out and rescue me on that first. I'm not a strong swimmer. And as soon as he grabbed me, he came over, he was able to grab hold of my hand, and I just felt the tide just, you know, rushing. It's just,
it was strong there. And I think either I held on to Chip's backpack, or he held on to something of mine, but I had assistance getting past that rush right there, because it was
and then they offered us kayak assistance on the next part of the river, and I took it. I held on to somebody's kayak. I just took a Swiftwater course 2 weekends ago, and we had to swim in Swiftwater, so I'm trying to improve and get more confidence.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, anyway, we'll move on from the swimming. And let's go back to Lemon Lime. That was your team name. I don't know if we said that in the beginning. What a cool name. What would you say was your proudest moment of the race, and was there anything you do differently?
Ooh, definitely for the doing differently. I didn't realize there was some gear that would be more helpful. So we just stuck the map in a large gallon size Ziploc to keep it dry. And when we were on the bike, I didn't know where to put it. That was easy. So I ended up riding it with it in my mouth for most of the miles so that I can hold on to my handlebars and change gears. So I couldn't have stuck it in my shirt. Like, I needed to figure out better gear. So because the bag inevitably, as I'm trying to bike and it's in my mouth, would of course blow up over my eyes so you can see. So I'm glad we didn't wreck. So I saw other people had like a clear bag that could carabiner on, and that kind of stuff I would love to use next time. And we saw the mat boards, which we heard they take a little while to get used to, but I think that would be nice gear to add to trying it again.
And I shouldn't have asked those questions in the same sentence because, of course, you said the things you want to do differently first, instead of saying anything about your proudest moment. So, what were you most proud of?
You want to do the proudest moment?
I don't know what my proudest moment was.
Recovering, Caroline had a bump. I think when Chip was with us,
Yeah.
it was really hot and we were on the biking leg and
I felt so sick.
she felt terrible for a little while and she
I
stopped,
hadn't eaten anything.
laid down, I poured some water on her head and she really quickly recovered and felt fine. So that was probably a proud moment that we didn't have to quit the race.
Yeah.
It was a seriously hot day too. Like we didn't mention that, but I think it was about 95 and the humidity was crazy and
It's miserable.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
that was
I
a
was
proud
really
moment.
glad that there weren't anyone that got seriously heat sick.
So if we were to do it over again, Caroline was saying that she would force herself.
5 minutes or something like.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought I was fine, and then what was it, 2 or 3 hours in, I just immediately gone.
Crash. Yeah.
So quick.
And it's hard because you think, oh, I haven't been out there that long.
Like I
don't
wasn't that
feel
hungry.
hungry.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to plan ahead. So
Yeah, that's what's fun about adventure racing that's different than a lot of other sports. The length of time that you're actually doing it means that there's a whole nother array of challenges that you don't have on a short race. You go run a 5K, 10K, it's short. I mean, you get into marathon length stuff and it's long, but in adventure racing, like when she bonked is exactly when she should have. Like the glycogen in your muscles has gone. Like you're 3 hours in, you have to fuel your body. And if you don't, and a lot of people can't fuel their body with high heart rate or they start getting sick and puke and things like that. So the more you do this, the more you have to really dial in your body and figure out what can I eat while it's hot, while I'm hammering on the mountain bike that my body will accept. And everybody's completely different. Some people do gels, some people do other stuff. Some people do the liquid, the 4-hour fuel or some other type of liquid that has calories. But it takes a long time to get that dialed in. So don't feel bad about it. That normally happens to people in adventure racing right around 3 to 4 hours in.
that's good to know. Yeah, like you said, it's different for everybody. So your body, your stomach says no, it may be liquids. These are good suggestions. Thank you.
I also feel like just lowering your heart rate some, forcing yourself to slow down, even though you could go faster.
Definitely took it party pace the next 30 minutes for sure on those mountain bikes.
Yeah.
Party pace. I
Party
love
pace.
that phrase.
That's what we call it on our mountain bike team back at home. Party pace.
And yeah, so you're both mountain bikers and mountain bike racers. What's the longest event you've participated in mountain biking?
Oh, I refuse to race because I never race. This Buff Betty was the first race.
She did one.
I did
and
one road bike
she
race
got
and
so
I hated
sick.
it. And I was sick the entire week leading up to it with my stomach. Every time I thought about it. So I've never raced since. But this was such a low stress kind of fun vibe that I decided to try it. So I hate racing with a passion.
If it just was like straight racing, I don't know if we'd do it.
That's
I
right.
don't think we
Yeah.
would.
So, but I do coach a mountain bike team. Our high school has a mountain bike team. So I've been coaching for 6 years and she was on the team the first couple. And so, so I do enjoy going fast on a mountain bike, I have to say, but no races for me. And she would compete in our statewide races. We have a mountain bike, 2 fall semester, spring semester seasons for our mountain bike teams. So she would compete there. Yeah.
And it was fun. Like I think I came up to you guys at that TA and I said, do you mind if I follow you if I film? I needed to get some filming and I'd missed the trek. I went the entire from the paddle to the trek trying to find people, or from the where was it? Yeah, I was trying to find them on foot, like any team, all the way to the TA, and I couldn't find any teams on track. I was like, can I just follow you guys? I've got to get some footage. And I think Caroline was like, if you can keep up. I was like, holy crap, I've got to put on my A game. And sure enough, they go bombing down this hill.
It was funny.
Yeah, and they were bombing, and I was like, whoa, like this is not normal. Like, especially Caroline, you were riding the bike like a downhill person would ride the bike. You're using your dropper. You're kind of playing around. Like you want to go 30 miles per hour faster than you're currently going. I was like, holy crap, I got a hammer to keep up with these guys. Yeah, it was fun.
That was fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's a real advantage. I think sometimes that can be a barrier to entry to the sport is the mountain biking.
That's what
Um,
we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So Kit, why don't you tell us how you learned to navigate? And do you have any suggestions for people learning to navigate?
I learned trial by fire, which is one way, you know. So when I started with racing in 2007, and then beyond, I raced with an all-women's team for 6, 7, 8 years, and I took on the brunt of the navigation, and I just learned something new every time I went. But in 2016, when I started racing kind of 24-hour races a little bit more competitively, I had my teammate Scott Cox. He's up in Canada. He had an orienteering background, and he started to teach me a lot more navigational tips and tricks. And that is what I would recommend for a much quicker learning curve. And so then you start learning things like how to put it all together with the attack points and the distancing and the bearings and, declinating the compass, stuff like that. So that, getting into an orienteering club, I think if you have an option, we don't up where I am. So I didn't really have many options other than just give it a go in the woods. And it's been a very long learning curve. It's kind of a bummer, but I feel better about it now, just continue with practice.
And is that something that you train with, or do you pretty much just train the disciplines, or how do you keep sharp?
Yeah, well, I now do a lot of races, so I'm already on my 6th or 7th of the year this year. And I like to do a lot of dot watching, and I love looking at maps of other races as they're going on and trying to decide kind of strategically, okay, how would I do that Rogaine style, which means that the points don't have to be in order. You can kind of choose which points to go after first, second, and what makes sense, what direction, because that attack point would be easier to find than that attack point, or it's so I hear some people that love to go out in the woods and just take their compass and go find whatever peak, or I can't. If there's no orange flags in the woods, I just don't find myself in the woods with a compass. And so I have to go after those orange flags. So I do a lot of just kind of self-reflection, and then also, online kind of dot watching fun with nav practice that way.
Yeah. And you've done a phenomenal job, and I don't know that anyone, well, maybe some realize, but the way that you got, you are heading up the Women of AR team was that your all women's team won the all women's division of nationals last year. And so I know you have some specific goals for your all women's team. I'm wondering what they are, and what is it that's made you so successful?
Those are different questions.
Yes.
Here's the obligatory cat picture in the podcast.
Nice.
So goals for the all women's team. I'm going to kind of backtrack a little bit with talking about visibility for women in a competitive lens. I think that, well, sorry, I've got so many things going through my mind now to share about all this. When I started decided to race for Women of AR this year, I actually had somebody ask me if one reason that I wanted to race on an all women's team was because I didn't want to race as fast anymore. And that's an insult to not only all women, but also all men in, the sport. And I think one thing that I really identify with just from my background and my, kind of competitive intrinsic nature is seeing more women on the podium and seeing more representation of not just women in the sport, but also from the competitive aspect. And I think other people, based on that statement to me, maybe need to see that as well, to see that it doesn't take a man to get a woman on a podium, or that women can be competitive in their own right. And so this year, we're really driven to try to get more representation of women on the podium. And if that comes from our team or from maybe our team inspiring more women's teams to sign up, then that's what I'm hoping for. And so, we're going through inviting a lot of women from other successful mixed gender teams and across the US and Canada to race with us. With, again, kind of that as our goal. And we're hoping to have a strong showing at nationals again this year. And, honestly, I want other all women's teams to beat us because I want it to drive more women competitively in the sport as well. So that's kind of the lens that I'm coming from. What was the other part of the question?
Well, so it was a little bit of a leading question because I know your team has been very successful this year. So maybe you could tell us the results you've had in the races you've done, and what is it about you and your team or that's made you so successful?
Yeah. I'm an athletic trainer. I'm a professor up at UVM, University of Vermont, and in sports medicine and exercise physiology backgrounds. And so I have just a lot of, for this sport, I have a lot of both professional and personal knowledge and experience. And so I've been training my other teammate, who also happens to be my partner. And so I'm her aerobic coach this year. And so we're really building up the team from, kind of the lens of getting to be more competitive. And so I think that's really led it to a lot of success. She's got a strength and conditioning coach this year as well. And so, yeah, I think that's helped driven our, coaching can be really important, not just coaching and navigation, like from an orienteering clinic, but also aerobically and again, kind of strength training, skills coaching. I hear Caroline and Allie have background in mountain biking. I think if there's one, I'm jumping ahead to some of the questions, but one advice that I could give, and I've heard this over and over again from a lot of other kind of top racers, it's skills development, including navigation, but mountain bike skills, paddling skills, those will really go a long way for competitiveness. So the fact that you've got a background in that is really awesome to hear. I guess so far as the Women of AR team, we're kind of going the wrong direction right now, but we started with an overall win. And then we had second place on the podium, overall third, and then fourth in our last race. So
I think people need to hear that. These are overall results that you're sharing, right? First, second, third, fourth. That's pretty
amazing. Yeah.
That's impressive.
What I find the most impressive that I love to see this is on 2 occasions of being on the podium, there was representation from an all male, an all female, and a mixed gender team on the podium, 1, 2, and 3. So that was really cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Way to go. That's really exciting. And Caroline and Allie, do you have any advice for other women that, might be thinking about doing adventure racing for the first time?
I guess I have advice first for race directors. I feel like for beginner races, I got so excited after this one. I started looking up other races, and some of them are so expensive, and it's a barrier to entry for sure. I think I found one that was $220 per person for maybe a 4-hour race or something. It just seems, for beginner, it's just too much with all this unknown. And I guess I think beginners need to get hooked on the Buff Betty kind of style, very welcoming, intro, affordable, because $120 was I think what we paid originally, but the race price went up. And I understand there's a lot that goes into it and it's worthy, but for a barrier to entry, that cost is notable. What was the other question? I'm sorry, I totally.
Do you have any advice for people who are considering their first race?
I would advise just starting
go for it.
Yeah, just go for it. Starting at one of those very beginner friendly races like this as a way to get in. How about you?
So I was saying
the same thing.
Yeah.
It was great fun. And I think Caroline and I both, we didn't know what to expect, but we're like, to see what comes. And we were delightfully surprised in the end how so many different facets, with the different types of transportation and then running through the woods and stamping the little card. It was just great fun. Loved it. Loved
Yeah.
I
every
think
minute.
a lot of people are attracted to this. It's different than other sports because it's an intellectual puzzle that you're trying to solve
Right.
while you're exercising, doing these fun sports. And like no other sport has that. I mean, orienteering does because it's like one part of adventure racing is orienteering. But you know, like your mountain bike races or you go do a trail run or whatever, a lot of times the course is flagged. You have no choice. You're just there just to go fast. Adventure racing is different. It's completely an intellectual's playground. And I'm not sure if that's what did it for you, but it's hard to get that same excitement of where do I go and what do I do, and you don't have to follow anybody. You're on your own to do this course whatever way you want to do your course.
And I really like that you guys set up the course in such a way that the last stage, you could do it in any order. So we had no idea what place we were in. We kind of knew we got to the bikes that we were the first ones there, but because it was 2 different locations and you could get the points in any order, we had no idea what, and so it kind of led to that excitement. So I appreciate the way you guys did that.
That's definitely often the case in adventure racing. You'll see teams around you, but you won't know how many points they have. And, anyone we see is our competition. Generally, like, we don't know. But so do you have any suggestions for how you think we can get more women in the sport? Because even though we've got this Women of our AR team that's doing really well and, the numbers are increasing, I feel like it's still not an even playing field at all. So how can we get more women?
I would say in my area in Charlottesville, we have women's mountain biking is growing. And I feel like because the mountain biking is the hardest of the sports to do,
And also to
skill-wise.
afford.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's good
Getting a mountain
bikes.
biking.
Right.
all
Yeah.
the
You don't
gear.
want to borrow someone's bike and figure out how to use it. I feel like if you were to go in the direction of bringing mountain bikers into the sport, then, people can paddle and trek and navigate, but that's the one. So I have another daughter and we thought about a 3-person team and the biking was just out for her. She wouldn't even consider it, even though I know she would have been great and fine, but she just wouldn't even get her head around it. So I think if you were to get more women in the sport, it'd be going through the mountain biking channel
Mhm.
and starting there because that way it's not that hard of a stretch to add on the other pieces.
Yeah, good idea. What about you, Kit? Do you have any ideas for how we can get more women in the sport?
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on that idea a little bit, the invite for all women's teams, I think is really important. And that could look like, especially with affordability, but it could look like, a 10% discount for all women's teams. I know a couple of race organizations did that. I know that Stephanie's been really with the Woman of AR group on Facebook there, trying to get some sponsorship money for all women's teams. I think that even outside of the fact that it makes it more affordable, it just is more of an extended invite for all women's teams as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's my big one.
What do you think, Chip? How can we get more women in the sport?
I mean, well, one is like listening to what Kit was saying, and I totally agree because a lot of times we race with more women than men. And some of our best races were it's like me being dragged along by 3 women. But the beauty of the sport, I think, if you compare it to things like football, basketball, stuff like that, like just men's size, it gives an advantage. You would never want a female to go on a football, just it's not nice. But in adventure racing, it's like women, there is no advantage to being male. Women are just as fast on a mountain bike, they're just as fast on foot, and they can navigate just as good. So it's just a really good sport that women can really be competitive, be on the podium, because males really don't have an advantage. And honestly, a lot of males, the mental toughness of women, especially over the longer period of time, let's say anything more than about 24 hours. And I think Heidi mentioned this. Heidi's the ARWS CEO, and she said what she sees in her experience where like women have a hard time hanging on for that first 24 hours. But the minute you get past that, the men are the ones struggling, and then the women are carrying the packs and towing and all this stuff. I think just it's a sport that women have a huge advantage in, because there is no disadvantage because of size or anything like that, and they're even better after 24 hours in the longer races. So I just getting the word out, I guess. Like with Caroline and Allie, do you guys like we have orienteering club in Central Virginia? Is there one in Charlottesville?
I don't know. I'd love to
No,
look
so
into it. Yeah, I'll check it out.
it
I've
seems
never
like that's another place. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I said I've just never heard of any of this stuff before.
Right. So that's probably the other way. Like orienteering is something that can be done with kids and get people out of high schools and things like that. Get them so that they're having fun running around the woods doing the scavenger hunt aspect, because that's just fun. Like what Kit said, it's like just bushwhacking through brambles for no reason just seems dumb. But you put a little orange flag and we get excited, like a cat chasing a laser or something like that. And so I think getting people in younger and getting them in through channels such as mountain biking or orienteering, that the cost is prohibitive, and it, out of all of the sports, adventure racing is a lot more expensive to put on, because you put on a 10K, you just have to flag a road and no big deal. With us, a lot of times on the longer races, you're getting permits with multiple jurisdictions and multiple parks, and we had to go out there. I think Andrea and I went out there 4 times to put on the course. And then we had to set all the flags, and you got to take up all the flags. You got to camp multiple nights, and it's really, race directors do this out of love. They don't do it. They're not charging the money because they're making profit. They're doing it just to hopefully cover their cost. But that is a little bit prohibitive on that. I don't know. Hopefully I answered the question.
Yeah, and I did look at some of these adventure races, and it's the same for 1 person versus 3 people. And it, with the family, I was looking at 4-person races, and I was thinking of my family of 4. And if it's $150 for one, and then I multiply that by 4, it's just too cost prohibitive for me to take my family.
Right.
It would be better to have, a team price but that makes sense for a family of 4 instead of those individuals.
Good point.
Good advice. I also think that, we're talking about all women's teams and women representation, but I would say also don't be afraid to be on a team with men. Most of the time I race with Chip, and it's rewarding no matter what gender you're racing with. When it comes down to it, we're all people with our own unique strengths to, add to a team. All right, so we're getting down to the final few questions. I'm wondering what keeps you motivated to train? Kit, why don't you start with that?
I've always been very intrinsically motivated to just do hard things and get better at them. So I find that my experience sometimes doesn't help too many people, because I just do it because I love to do it and I want to do it. Yeah, I mean, obviously this year I'm motivated to, for our goals with our all women's team, but I just like to get better at doing harder things and seeing where my limits can get pushed a little bit. My perceived limits can get pushed. I love feeling like I'm tougher and looking back and seeing that I've improved, very professionally and personally too. I love like kinesthetic learning. So having to learn skills like new mountain bike skills or paddling and stuff. I love that as well, and getting to tap into my body and, feel how things are different with each stroke. And, yeah,
I can relate to some of that too. And Caroline and Allie, what do you think? Are you going to continue to adventure race, and how do you keep motivated to stay fit and ready to race?
I say we do it again. I wouldn't say adventure racing wise. I'm a college athlete, so I have to train for that all the time. I run track. So I would say that keeps me super busy. But
sure,
you, on the other hand, are kind of, you do it on your own. Yeah.
I've had a lot of I've had 6 knee surgeries, and so I'm constantly evolving what I can and can't do. And so I admit that the trekking, jogging part was a struggle for me, and I'm really glad you guys broke it up into 2 sections, because it's harder for me to do a longer pass at one time. So I like the idea of having a race, if we do another AR race, which we're looking at the calendar, as a goal, and knowing that I need to keep my needs in good enough shape to be able to complete a race. So
I would say though, it was funny, we were riding and talking and during the race, and I said, it kind of feels like we've been training for this since I was born, because I grew up on a mountain bike and hiking and Did you guys ever do geocaching? I felt that's kind of what the little things were, and we kayaked all the time, everything. So
Yeah,
it's just
kind of a lifestyle.
kind of just, yeah.
That's really cool that you get to share that together, and yeah, that it just pulls it all together. That's really, really neat. I really hope you keep racing and that we see you on another course.
Yeah, we checked
and
Betty for next year, and it's when she's back in college. So I was like, I don't know if we can make it work, but depends on where it's going to be held, whether we can meet up from her college and so forth.
The other thing,
Yeah.
adventure racing is a fun sport. Like and I guess all sports may be a little bit like this, but you don't have to do it to win. And you know, let's say your knees, like it's like, look, we're going to do the race. We're going to have fun. We're going to walk. We're not going to run. We're going to do the best we can. But the nav and the community and the friendships and just the event is fun. And so that's another thing. It's like really, like, when it comes down to Kit and the goals, like her goal is like, we're going to hit the podium. We're going to go fast. We're going to optimize every little thing. Some people come out there and, you know, we've got friends that are in their 60s and 70s that race. They bring their dog, they bring their kids, have a great time. So just don't think that you have to go in, you have to run. It's kind of like, go your own pace and just enjoy yourself, and just, you're outdoors, you're solving puzzles.
I think we had a goal of walking the uphills and jogging the downs, so that way we could save a little bit of my knees. So
that's a great goal. We do that too.
If I may, you can actually, to have this in your arsenal of different paces as well, you can train yourself to be comfortable walking at fast speeds. You know, one way to do it is just either go on the treadmill and put it at 4 miles an hour, you know, or, you know, titrate up, but, or go outside with your dog and walk the dog. You know, I do that a lot of times, and I just try to maintain an average of 4 miles an hour, and being able to walk fast and be comfortable walking fast, you know, have that neurological, it's just training. It can be really empowering too.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's good to hear that people can actually train the walking part of it, because sometimes we'll have teammates that are fabulous runners, and then we get to walking and they're like, oh, this is it's a totally different thing, you know. All right, Kit, what's next for you? What's your next race?
We're actually I'm going to do my very first single track mountain bike race. I've done, like, it's called Race to the Top of Vermont and here at the top is the highest mountain in Vermont on the toll road, but I've never done a single track mountain bike race in itself. So I'm actually I'm nervous. I get a little nervous being on single track behind people, especially like when I want to try to pass, and I usually either don't or I just have difficulty passing people. So I'm not sure what to expect with a mountain bike race. So Caroline, Allie, if you have any advice there.
Don't worry about it. That part will take care of itself. You'll be spread out enough, and you just ask when you need to pass, and people
are so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't let it stress you out.
Just ask. I always feel bad when I'm asking, even because, yeah. Okay. All right. I guess.
Yeah. Just, hey, do you mind if I slip by you real quick, like on a straightaway when it's not real technical uphill or something? And just, yeah. Usually people are like, you know, they know you're on there. Yeah. They know they're holding you back. So they don't want to be an ass and hold you back. Cause I think most people, like what Allie said, most people are nice and you won't have a problem.
And it will spread out pretty quickly, so you won't have these throngs of people.
Yeah.
Especially if it's an uphill race.
It's got like 6,000 feet of elevation over the course of the 40 miles or so. But
wow.
And then Hardfall in Vermont in August, and then Nationals in September. It's our next couple.
That's exciting. All right, Chip, did we forget to ask anything?
Well, I think that was it.
I wanted to add, I told Chip about this, and he said that these aren't allowed in all the races, but my husband and I happen to have intercom helmets that we use on our road bike rides for safety, so we can ride front to back instead of side to side and talk to each other. And Caroline and I used those during the race, and they were fabulous. They were a true helper, because even though we are only, less than 100 feet apart, we could talk in a normal tone of voice and, be separated a little bit. That was such a game changer for, not having to always be right beside each other.
Hear us if we wanted to say something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely been times when Chip and I wish we had that. I think generally, though, the sport steers away from anything very technical like that. And
Makes sense.
it could be considered cheating in some races. And it all depends on the rules. Like every race is has their own set of rules. But I think the standard is that that's not allowed. But you guys have any other experience with that, Chip or Kit?
Well, I mean, it's in adventure racing, there are no rules unless there are rules. So you have to start at first principles, and you assume everything is legal until the race director says it's not legal. And in the race rules for this race, it wasn't in there perfectly legal. But usually they would say, like, you're not allowed to use GPS enabled devices. And like Alaska, we're getting ready to go to Alaska, and on their gear list, it says you can't use any type of like walkie-talkie communication devices. So it's on there. I think what they're trying to do is stop people from, like, one person goes in to get the CP, or you can communicate. Like, they want you to stay within eyes and ears of each person just to keep the team together. And so if you have walkie-talkies, you can spread out and not get lost. Like the worst case scenario, one teammate's on the other spur and you can't find each other and you have no communication. So then the only thing you can do is go back to your last known location to re-find your team.
Which we've had to do before, but
yeah, we've done that. It's because let's say you're mountain biking cruising along, but I get a little bit in front, I make a left and you guys keep going straight. And it's like, uh-oh, what happened? So I think the communications, it's to keep the team together. But again, it just be sure to look at the race rules, whatever going into the race. And then, if it says don't use them, then don't use them. But no, after seeing you guys operate, it's like, dang, I want that with Andrea. Cause like you're right. Like, we're mountain biking. You can't really talk. So we're both listening to a podcast, but it'd be really cool if, like, instead of having to turn my head, like, we could sit there and have a discussion while we're mountain biking. And I thought it is brilliant. Like, I totally want to go buy
other people a couple times.
Yeah.
I'd be walking around talking to you and they'd be like, who are you talking to?
Well, racing solo, I talked to myself the entire race, so I'm sure everybody thought that too.
I talk to myself when I'm racing solo too. Yeah, it's funny. It starts earlier and earlier too. Like, it just feels good.
So,
I think
I will bring up one thing.
I was just going to say another question some people have about, what, technology we can use or not are pedometers. Like, for some reason, it's okay for us to use an odometer on our bike, but we're not allowed usually to use a pedometer to count our steps for us. Yeah, I don't know why that we get to use something on the bike and not any other discipline. But that the odometer certainly helps on the bike. Yeah, anyway, what were you going to say, Chip?
I mean, you were asking if there's any extra questions about it, but especially since Caroline and Allie are new, the adventure race community is a piece of it that I also find. I've done 5Ks and 10Ks and some bike races and all that, but it doesn't seem like a community. It seems like, there's people there, and maybe if you do it a lot, you start recognizing people. But a lot of times they get done with the race, everybody gets their beer and their banana, and they leave. In adventure racing, as you saw at the Buff Betty, it's like a lot of people know each other. They've done it enough where they've crossed paths, or like Kit was saying, dot watching. You start seeing your friends, and now you're watching their dot while they're racing a different race. And it's just, you get there and it starts becoming like a family reunion. And then it's like, it's not just running. It's not just mountain biking. It's like we adventure racers have a lifestyle of adventure. Like Kit said, we're pushing our limits. We're trying to do hard things. And when you get to a race, you're around these other people with that like mindset. And so that's one of the biggest things I love about it, that I have not been able to find that in any other sport. And we're actually doing a podcast on this, I think, coming up soon, on the whole community friendship part of adventure racing that's different than other sports.
Yeah, but also, even if you don't know anyone before the race, once you are in the race and you might be around a team that is having, the same struggles that you are, you start to have that bond, like, oh, we went through this together. And then, it creates that sense of community pretty naturally. Anyway, ladies, is there anything else that you want to share that we didn't touch on? Okay.
Thank you for having us on. This is great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all your input, and congratulations on your win on the Buff Betty. And I hope you keep at it. Caroline and Allie, welcome to adventure racing. And Kit, I know we'll see you around. We'll see you at nationals for sure. And yeah, thanks everybody else for listening, and we'll see you out there. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a comment.
If you have a question for the next mailbag segment, call 757-354-4795 and leave us a voicemail or a text with your name, city you are calling from, and your question.
To find additional content, including the video versions of these discussions, you can search for ThisABILITY Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope this podcast inspired you to focus on your abilities and plan your next adventure.
See you on the trail.